everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for the best books of 2021. So happy new year! It is the 1st of January for me when this goes up. Of course I'm filming it a couple of days early, but it will be when this goes up the 1st of January, so happy new year. I just thought it would be really nice to start out the year on a really positive note and talk about my favourite books for 2021. I am going to try and keep this video as brief as possible. We all know that I have a tendency to ramble, but I'll try and keep it brief. So I'm only going to give a very little synopsis. I've spoken about all of these books in previous videos, but yeah, like I said, I'll just give you a brief synopsis and I will give you a brief understanding of what I thought of them and why I like them so much. This year I've just gone through my core pile and had a look at all the books that I gave 4 or 5 stars to and had a little bit of a think about which books I still feel really favourably towards and so on. I haven't gone and collected these books off the shelves, partly because some of them were library books, some of them I've actually lent out to other people, and yeah, I just haven't. I figured that they could very easily be put up here, so that's what I'm going to do for today. Anyway, let's get on with my top 10 books of 2021. Shall we? These are in no particular order. I haven't put them into my absolute favourites to my least favourites or vice versa, with the exception that I'm actually just going to give kind of a special mention runners-up position to Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor.
Hello, it's Editing Mel here. So, in the day and a half since I filmed the video you are currently watching, I finished Strange the Dreamer, and I can definitely say that it is one of my favourite books of the year. So yeah, I also realised when I just sat down to edit that I had managed to only have 9 books. So this can be another one to make up 10. Anyway,
Strange the Dreamer is kind of hard to explain, to be honest with you. It is very whimsical, it has beautiful writing, the characters are really well written, and it's just one of those books that just feels like you are watching a movie or in a dream. It has very dreamlike qualities, as the name suggests, Strange the Dreamer. I feel like I don't often see a lot of people talk about what the story is about because there's a lot going on in the story, but like I said, it's just got beautiful whimsical writing. It's very kind of, yeah, feels like fairy tale or a dream or something like that. It's very character focused and very kind of dreamlike. So if that's not the kind of thing that you're interested in, if you don't love books that aren't quite as plot driven and a bit more focused on world building and a bit more focused on characterization, you may not like it very much, but personally, I think that it's absolutely beautiful, completely fascinating. Laini Taylor is one of those authors who makes me just go, how? How? How did these people come up with these things? Where do they get these ideas from? How do their brains work? They just absolutely amaze me. And I'm just going to go down the list in order of which I wrote them, and roughly that means in order of which I read them, with the exception of the first 2 that I'm going to talk to you about. And the first one is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, and then the second one is A Curse of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So both of those were by Sarah J. Maas, so that's why I thought that they should both be mentioned at the same time. Let's talk about Crescent City first of all. Crescent City, or House of Earth and Blood, was my first ever Sarah J. Maas. I know that quite a few different people have said that maybe don't start with that one if it's your first Sarah J. Maas because it actually is her best and therefore you won't love the others. But I started with this one anyway. So it is an urban fantasy. I do not know whether it's set in our world because if it is, it's in kind of a future post-apocalyptic type of world, but either way it is an urban fantasy, so it's set in a city and it's a paranormal fantasy as well. So there are fae, there are angels, there are werewolves, there are vampires, there are all sorts of different paranormal supernatural beings, and we follow Bryce, who at the very beginning of the book, her best friend is murdered and her entire pack are murdered. Bryce is not, and then it's a few years later and we're following Bryce and how she is living her life, but then through a series of different reasons she is involved in the becomes involved in the investigation into her best friend and all the others' murders. There's a lot more to it than that, but like I said, I'm just giving very brief synopsises. I really enjoyed this one because it just was really fun, basically. I thought it was actually really well written. I have heard people say that Sarah J Maas isn't the best writer in the world, and I have to say that with her other books, I would tend to agree with that. I think she's a good writer, don't get me wrong, but she definitely isn't, you know, up there in terms of like, this is the most amazing literary voice in the entire world kind of thing. But I do think that she writes the kind of young adult or new adult fantasy romance, which I guess is what it is, although I would say it was more on the fantasy side, really well. She has really great characters. She is really good at writing, tearing your heart out basically. So she's really good at writing angst and writing upset and heartache, and she's really good at writing action, and action that kind of does really tear at your heartstrings. So she's good at setting up the world in such a way that you will 100% really enjoy, get into the characters and engage with the characters. I think characterization is probably her best quality in terms of a writer, but I still think she's quite good at building a world and building a story. And like I said, I really enjoyed Crescent City. At the very beginning, I'd say it was a little bit info dumpy, but as it went on, I just got more and more invested and more interested and more engaged, and in the end, I absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 stars, and yeah, like I said, one of my favourite books of the year. The next one is Akamath, like I said. So this is actually the second book in a Court of Thorns and Roses series. So there's Akata, which is a Court of Thorns and Roses, and then Akamath, which is a Court of Mist and Fury, and then there is Aka War, which is a Court of Rings and Ruin. And I read all 3 of those books this year, and Akamath is actually my favourite. I don't want to go into any huge amount of detail about what the book itself is about, but I'll just let you know that the basic premise of the entire series is that the first book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So it's set in another world, it's a fantasy world again, and we have Fae, and then we have humans, and Fae and human live in the same world, but they're separated, and the Fae are super powerful, humans aren't. There's a bit of a rift between them. You get the idea. Anyway, and then one day Feyre, who is the main character, for various reasons, which again I won't go into, is in a position where she has to go and live with the Fae, and then we have the Beauty and the Beast retelling. Now, the thing that I really enjoyed about Akamath is that we're set up with the world and the history and what's going on in the world and stuff in Akata. And we think that we think things are a certain way, we think certain characters are a certain way. And then in Akamath, basically it gets entirely turned on its head, and suddenly we're seeing the same characters in a very different light, and we're seeing their actions in a very different light, and we start to question some of the things that we thought was going on. And I thought that was really well done, and yeah, really clever, and it just made Akamath really interesting for me. I did enjoy Akata, I'm pretty sure I gave that 5 stars as well, but yeah, just something about the way that she managed to do that, and it didn't feel gimmicky, it didn't feel disingenuous, it just was really interesting. And I also thought she talked about trauma really well, so I really appreciated it, and I thought it was really fun at the same time. Same sort of stuff as Crescent City. Lots of action, lots of angst, lots of sexy times, lots of fun stuff, lots of paranormal, but yeah, just really interesting and really fun. So those 2 are my first 2 favourite books of the year. The next book I want to talk about is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. As I'm going to say for all of these books, I absolutely loved this one. I thought that it was incredibly well written. I actually think that Octavia Butler is an amazing writer, and I'm super excited to read more of her stuff. I haven't quite got there yet, but definitely it's on my radar of something I would like to do. I'm not going to 100% say in 2022, but certainly I'd love to read some more of her work soon. But yeah, this is my first Octavia E. Butler, and it just blew me away. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Beautifully written. She deals with some really hard-hitting stuff in a really interesting way. I thought her characters were really well done, and I just found her to be an incredibly compelling author. So Kindred is about a young black woman. When I say young black woman, she's in her kind of mid-20s, I think, who is from the 1970s, and one day she suddenly gets compelled back in time to the 1860s, I think, or something like that, into the antebellum South. The first time it happens, it only happens for about 5 minutes or so, but when that occurs, she sees that there's a young white boy about to die, and she rescues him and stops him from dying. Then she's suddenly flung back to her present time. She keeps having these circumstances where she is put back in time. It's always back in time to interact somehow with this boy in different age of his ages, but it happens to her all in the one kind of, I don't know, period of like week or month or something like that, quite short space of time. But for him, it's different periods of his life. So when he's a little boy, a bit older, and so on into adulthood. And every time it's for a longer period of time. And what I thought was really, really interesting is that the time travel aspect is there, and it's the driving point of the plot, but it really isn't the point of the book. It really isn't what the book is about. So because of the time travel, that allows the action to happen, but it's actually about slavery, essentially, and racism and American history and what was happening back in the time of slavery and how that affected and the way the black people lived during slavery and what their lives were like and how, yeah, all of that. And also the differences between how black people were treated and how white people were treated, and the conversation, you know, when you read something where you think, well, if I were born in that time, I wouldn't have acted like that. If I were a white person in the antebellum South, I wouldn't have been a slave owner, etc., etc. We don't know that because we're living in a different world, and we're basing, I would do that differently on our life now, what we know now, whereas would we have lived differently if we were brought up in that situation? Would we have seen it as something that wasn't okay? And even if we did, would we have done anything about it? And I just found that really interesting. So yeah, I've said I'm not going to go on too much, so I better stop talking about it right now, but it's just an amazing book and I definitely think that you should go and read it. So there you go. Alright, so next up is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series, and it is definitely my absolute favourite of the trilogy. I did really enjoy the entire trilogy, but I really, really, really enjoyed The Lies of Loch Lamora. I think what I enjoyed most about it was the fact that I was quite surprised by it. So I went into the book expecting a fairly sort of typical fantasy in terms of the world and the structure of the society and the structure of the characters and the structure of the book. It was a fairly straightforward, bit of a dark, gritty kind of fantasy. But I found the writing style was almost Shakespearean. There was something kind of, not sarcastic, but something kind of slightly different than what you'd expect from just a kind of straight fantasy in the line of, say, Lord of the Rings or something like that. It's a heist book, so it actually follows the Gentleman Bastards. The two sort of main Gentleman Bastards were Jean and Locke, and they are the kind of leaders of this gang of thieves, and they do all sorts of heists and different things like that. So it's a heist story, but it's set in a fantasy world, so that's a little bit different as well. But yeah, I just thought that it was really, really well written. I love the way that he used this fantasy setting to write, like I said, almost a Shakespearean kind of drama with lots of action and lots of things going wrong all the time and just lots of hijinks and all the sort of fun that you'd expect from a really fun, comedic action Shakespeare play. So yeah, like I said, absolutely love this book and I do highly recommend it. If you like fantasy, but also if you do like Shakespeare, but you also like fantasy, if you get what I'm trying to say, I think you'd really, really love it. So I highly recommend The Lies of Loch Lamora and the entire trilogy of the Gentleman Bastards, but particularly the first one, Lies of Loch Lamora, one of my favourite books of the year. Next up, we have Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. So this is actually a Greek myth retelling. So it's one of the ones where it's kind of giving a story to a character who we know a lot about from mythology, but we don't necessarily get from their perspective. So the person is obviously Ariadne. So Ariadne was the daughter of Minos of Crete, and that makes her the sister of the Minotaur, and she also was the person that helped Theseus to figure out how to escape from the labyrinth. So she essentially set it up for Theseus to know how to kill her brother and escape the labyrinth. They then leave Crete together, and she's left by herself on an island. Pretty sure it's Naxos, but now I can't quite recall, but I'm pretty sure it's Naxos. And then later she meets and marries Dionysus, who is the Greek god of wine, but also is quite a dark Greek god. Incidentally, I did actually watch a video about Dionysus, which was written by, now, who made the video? Overly Sarcastic Productions, I believe, is the channel name, and they did a video about Dionysus, which I found really interesting. So if you want to know more about that, just as a total aside, I will link that in the description below. But anyway, so we follow Ariadne and her life and her experiences and all of those things, because like I said, in various different mythologies we get to see Ariadne and those things happening, but you don't get to see her point of view. We also follow her sister, Phaedra, and yeah, it's just really well written. I really enjoyed it. I thought that the characterization was fantastic. I thought the world building was brilliant. I really love these sorts of books where we get to see a different side of a character that is not as well known. Particularly, it's often women. They are the kind of heroines of a story, and they usually get treated pretty badly, or they are doing something that's considered really awful. But Greek mythology just kind of brushes over the reasons that happened. But I really enjoyed this particular book because it gave you a lot of the different reasons why these things were happening. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you enjoy Greek mythology. Alright, so next up we have Hollopox by Jessica Townsend. This is actually the third book. Is it the third book? Yes, it's the third book in the Nevermore series. So I'm not going to go into any detail about the book particularly, but the series in general, we follow a young girl, I think she's 11 or 12, she's probably more like 13 in this book, but a young teenager called Morrigan Crow. And in the first book, Nevermore, the whole thing is fantasy world, but anyway, Morrigan is a cursed child, and cursed children are blamed for pretty much everything that goes wrong, but also they are destined to die on their 11th birthday. So when it comes around to her 11th birthday, Morrigan fully expects to be dead, but instead she is whisked off to Nevermore, which is a kind of other world in this world, so kind of through a portal type of thing, by a character called Jupiter North, who's kind of a father figure. And in the first book, again, she is then entered into this trial to join kind of a magical society. So in Hollopox, we see a bunch of different things happening, but she still lives in Nevermore. She is still involved in this magical society. She lives with Jupiter North in his hotel. And yeah, they're just really beautifully written, really whimsical, really fun, really imaginative, just lovely middle grades. Most people that I've seen talk about these books have absolutely loved them, and I am one of those people also. I loved every single book that I read of them so far. I'm really excited because the next one comes out in 2022, so keep an eye out for that. I'm pretty sure it's called Silverborn. But yeah, really enjoyed this book. Speaking of beautiful, whimsical writing, the next book that I want to talk to you about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is my first V.E. Schwab, and I loved this book. I thought it was absolutely stunning. I thought it was really well written. I really enjoyed the writing style. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed pretty much everything about it. I enjoyed the storyline. I loved the twist at the end, and I just thought it was beautiful. And like I said, absolutely beautiful writing. Really whimsical, kind of lyrical writing, which is something I really appreciate. So in this one, we follow Addie. And it starts out in the 1700s, I believe, in France. Addie is engaged to someone that she doesn't want to be engaged to, so it's a arranged marriage, and she kind of calls on like a dark spirit and asks that she be able to basically live her own life however she wants, which is what happens. But the bargain that is struck is one that, yes, she'll get to live her own life, and in fact she'll get to live forever, but the catch is that no one will ever remember her, ever. So while they're talking, they'll see her, they'll be able to interact with her, they'll remember what, you know, they're talking about at the time, but say they're at a party and they're having a chat and then the person goes off to go to the bathroom, they come back, they're not going to remember any of that interaction, that she even exists. This goes on for about 200 years, and then she's in New York, I think in like the 2011s or 2010s or something like that. She meets someone who actually remembers her, and yeah, it's about that, how that plays out, what happens, and yeah, I just thought it was beautiful, really lovely. I'm a little bit nervous actually about reading any other books by V.E. Schwab. I have heard that a lot of their other books are quite different from Addie LaRue, and in fact quite a few people that really like their other books don't necessarily love Addie LaRue as much. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I do want to give some of the other books a try, so let me know what you think I should start with. Next up, we have The Miseducation of Cameron Post by Emily M. Danforth. This is a contemporary, and it is set in, when I say contemporary, I think somewhere in the 2000s. I'm not 100% sure, I can't really remember where exactly, but in the States. It's about a young woman whose parents pass away. I'm trying to not be spoilery. Whose parents pass away when she is quite young, in her pre-teens, I think, or possibly early teens, and she is made to live with her aunt, who is a very right-wing conservative Christian, but Cameron has feelings for other girls, but she doesn't really know how to kind of acknowledge that. She's exploring it and exploring her sexuality, but it's very it's very hidden behind closed doors because of her aunt and her aunt's fundamentalism, basically. And then I'm not sure exactly how old she is. I'd say about 16. When she's 16, her aunt, it's all out in the open, gets all put out in the open, and she gets sent to one of these conversion camps, and a conversion camp where the idea is to convert these homosexual feelings to straight feelings, basically. And it's about her in this camp and how she approaches that, what happens as a result of that, etc. I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really, really, really well written. I thought it was done in such a way that was really respectful. I actually don't know, so please do let me know if you know whether or not it's own voices. I don't actually know whether Emily M. Danforth is queer or not, but either way, I personally thought that it was really well written and thought it was really respectful and dealt with those topics in a really sincere and, yeah, like I said, respectful way. And it just gave me a whole new kind of understanding of a world that I've never had reason to know anything about, and I thought it was really well written, like I keep saying, and yeah, just fantastic. So highly recommend. 2 more to go. So next up we have Every Word by Ellie Marnie. This is actually the second book in the Every series. So the Every series is a young adult trilogy, the first one being Every Breath, and again, I'm not going to go into details about the specific things that happen in Every Word, but I'll just let you know in general about the series. So we follow Rachel Watts and James Mycroft. Rachel has just moved from the kind of country, rural Victoria to Melbourne, and she befriends James Mycroft, who is a very troubled but incredibly intelligent young man who lives just down the road from her. It is a kind of Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes, John Watson retelling, but like I said, it's young adult, and instead of Sherlock and John, we have James Mycroft and Rachel Watts. So it's set in Australia, so there's quite a lot of things that are quite different about it, but I thought it was really well done in the way that Ellie Marnie has written it as a retelling. So they do actually kind of make a bit of a joke about the retelling within the text, which, you know, is the kind of thing that could be done well or not done well, and I think in this instance is done really, really well. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Fantastic mystery. I did like the entire series, all 3 books I really, really enjoyed, but I have to say that the second one is my favourite. But yeah, I just think she is a really good writer. I think she's a really good young adult writer, so I could definitely see that this would be something that teenagers would really enjoy. But having said that, as a 40-year-old woman, I still really enjoyed it as well. So if you enjoy young adult mysteries, similar to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I would say, by Holly Jackson, then I would definitely recommend that you pick this up. Like I said, I thought that it was a fantastic series, just really well written, characters were really well done, and it was just really fun to read. So one of my favourite books of the year. And the final book that I'd like to talk to you about today is The Secret Keeper by Kate Morton. This is, I think it kind of straddles the line between a kind of general contemporary, maybe women's fiction and a literary fiction. It's one of those books where we switch backwards and forwards from present day, when I say present day it was like 2011, to past. We follow a variety of different characters and there is a mystery at its core. One of the main characters, Laurel, is trying to uncover the mystery. It's a family mystery that occurred in the past but is affecting the present, and Laurel in 2011 is trying to uncover what really happened, why it happened, etc. I just thought it was really, really well written. I thought the elements of the mystery and the different times and the different characters were done really well. I thought that the way that we got the information to piece the story and the mystery and, you know, the general what is going on here together was done really, really well. So I highly recommend this book if that sounds like something that you would enjoy. I wouldn't say she is necessarily a lyrical writer in quite the same way as V.E. Schwab or Laini Taylor, but I definitely felt like it had sort of lyrical aspects to it. It just felt very kind of, when I think of lyrical writing, I kind of like poetry in a way, and that's how I felt with this book. But yeah, that's how I felt, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. Like I said, I thought the way that she wove the various different pieces together to give you a mystery and to uncover that mystery, it was really, really well done. And that is the 10 books that I found to be my all-time favourites of this year, 2021. Let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them. Did you love them as much as I did? Did you merely like them? Did you not like them at all? Please let me know all of that stuff in the comments below. If you have any other comments that you would like to leave for me, then please do that in the comments below as well. If you would like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me some kind of floral emoji, because quite a few of these books have flowers on the cover and have beautiful floral covers. So yeah, if you'd like to leave me a floral emoji, that would be amazing. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.